I am now going on 6 hours of recording today. We have 3 draft picks, 3 new additions to the Guardian system. I will go in depth on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Guardians. You're getting 2 shows today. There won't be one for Thursday. This is kind of replacing that. So if you want to save this for Thursday, go ahead. Otherwise, there's also a live stream. If you're an audio listener, if you want to go hear my thoughts, I did a live stream during the second round. Justin joined me for part of it. I'm debating whether or not I will do a live stream for part of day 2 or not. But we're going to get into all of it. Cleveland added 3 players to their organization. They picked what exactly were their picks? I'm not good with knowing things like that. You'd think I would know. But their picks in this draft were 23, 58, and 62. Now, my big board was 57 players deep. Now, there were plenty of players still on my big board at 58. Unfortunately, at least in my opinion, they did not. They only drafted one of my top 58 players. I currently have 11 players left. I'll share that later on the show, who the top 11 are. This was a weird draft. Let's just go ahead and state that at the outset. What I loved about last year's draft was that draft class and the year before it, the last 2 years really have leaned 100% into knowing what they develop well. They went for players that fit their approach and what they have proven that they can coach and develop. This year's class felt like a challenge class. Like, hey, we haven't done this, but we're going to do it. Catchers, we have been awful. Prep catchers in particular. It's been, I saw someone tweet out today, Can't Say Royals fan, that if you're looking for in the last 10 years, the prep catchers who have the most games played or highest WAR, one of them is Bo Naylor in baseball in general. There is no riskier position to take than a prep catcher. And they took one. Hey, power hitting. We don't have any. Oh, that's what we got. Oversized, big velocity pitchers with command issues. We got one of those. A guy with one pitch. We got one of those. It's a weird draft class. Boston and Tampa had my best draft classes. Oakland had my worst. Let's be honest about Miles Naylor for a second. A lot of people were mad they didn't draft Miles Naylor. If they had drafted Miles Naylor in the first round, that would have been a terrible selection. Ralphy Velazquez was the 5th best player on my board. He was a solid pick. I had him 22nd overall. 5th best player, had the most power potential in that group. If you want power, this was the guy. The only other player who had plus power was Bryce Matthews, who would go to the Houston Astros a few picks later. Miles Naylor is not as good of an athlete, doesn't have as good of a hit tool as Bo, doesn't have the power of Josh. He's an in-betweener. He's a 3rd-round value. Oakland, every single guy they drafted was taking 20 picks earlier than I thought they would go. I mean, not necessarily thought they'd go. We knew Wilson would go somewhere in that range, but they overdrafted all up and down their board. Oakland had the worst draft. It's pretty safe to say. Ryan Lasko didn't develop properly at Rutgers, interesting athlete, but didn't have the performance you expect for a player with his skills in a lesser conference, because the Big Ten is not a Power 5 conference in baseball. You go through that. Miles Naylor was a 3rd-round, 4th-round guy to me, and Jacob Wilson was a back of the 1st-round value. And so we had Joe Whitman and Cole Emerson go in terms of the Ohio kids. Cole Emerson goes to Seattle, and Joe Whitman went to the Giants. Giants had an interesting draft. Also kind of liked it in the end. It's about who you get, not necessarily where you get them. Cleveland's draft, we'll start segment 1. Ralphy Velazquez, 22nd player on my big board. When they drafted him, the only players that I had rated higher, Colin Houck, who would go to the Mets in the comp round. He's probably going to be an overslot. Aiden Miller, who can't remember where he went after that. Not long after that pick. Maybe Philadelphia, I believe. Bryce Matthews, who went to Houston. And that's not, there's Hurston Waldrep, who went to Atlanta. So it was almost every single guy that I had ahead of him went immediately after in the draft. Waldrep, the next pick. 2 picks later to Miller, and a few more picks Listen, Brock Wilken, who most of us thought could get, and here's the thing. As I was working on mocks last second, I don't even know how I did. This was my sloppiest year of mocks ever. I just didn't have the time. It felt like college bats were going to start flying, and they did. In the from pick 10 to pick 10 was a prep arm. From 11 to 20, 9 out of 10 picks were college bats. And Wilken was one of them. And it got to the point the only guy left standing was Yohandy Morales, who went 40th, which is exactly where I ranked him. So it was a run starting with Nolan Chanel on those college hitters. So they could, I mean, I love Bryce Matthews. I'd have been ecstatic if they had drafted him there, but they didn't. And like I said, at that point in time, Ralphy Velazquez was my 5th. My 6th highest rated player, if you were curious, would have been George Lombard Jr., who the Yankees took. So it was literally all of my guys just in that rush right there in a row outside of the Padres selection. What are they getting in Ralphy Velazquez? Now, there are 2 prep players who every time I went back to, I kind of debated and moved them up a little more. But you know what? I do. I really like this guy. And one was Ralphy Velazquez. He's one of those guys that every single time I revisited him, I would move him up the board. The other one was Arun Namala, and I guess and the other one, there's 3 of them, Nazan Zantello, who great pick by Boston in round 2. Now, the reason I liked Velazquez is, listen, he's a thick built guy. Barrel chested, built like a tank, but he had really good pop times. A sub 1.9 pop time is fantastic. So he gets up quickly. Arm is a real weapon. He could be a solid defender back there because framing is going to go away. Robot umps will happen in the next 5 to 10. And it's going to take him 5 years to get to the big leagues. Let's be honest. If he stays a catcher and does not outgrow the position, or the bat doesn't cause him to get fast-tracked ahead of time, it's going to take him 5 years to get to the big leagues. It took Bo Naylor 5+, and Huntington Beach High School has produced a lot of talent. Cleveland loves their California kids. It is a known school. Velazquez, I think, has plus hit, plus power potential. Uses the whole field. You're drafting him for the bat, and there's a chance he can stick at catcher. The exit velocity is fantastic. The swing is good. Everything about him is pretty solid, except for the fact that prep catchers fail more than prep arms. It is a risky group. And then when guys are successful, it's often because they move off the position. Bryce Harper was a catcher when he was drafted, but the bat was too good. It would have held him back to try to get that, to be a catcher and get to the big leagues. And there's a chance of Velazquez. The problem is, well, the arm is good. He is not a good athlete. Pretty slow 60-yard dash. He's a catcher. He's a first baseman. That's really it. So, I talked about on the podcast, there have not been a lot of top 15 pick prep first baseman. That is very odd. But they've actually had a pretty successful rate, the highest rate of success. Now, it's the smallest of sample sizes. So I don't even know if it should count amongst prep first basemen. But what you're drafting here is a left-handed bat with plus power, plus hit, and a real chance to stick a catcher. Does this mean, hey, Bo Naylor's out? No, this guy isn't going to be ready till Bo Naylor's a free agent. It takes forever to develop a catcher. And if Bo Naylor works out, great. Maybe they give him an extension. Maybe he's here for long term. Maybe they don't. Maybe he's not good enough for that. And at the end of the thing, you let him walk like they're kind of doing with Ahmed now. But this organization had no catchers in system. And they had no power hitters. And he is the best catching prospect in the system by a large distance the minute Bo Naylor officially graduates, if he hasn't graduated the prospect ranks already. And in terms of power hitting, I mean, he's up there with Valera in this group. It's not exactly there's no one, I don't think there's anyone in the organization that has double plus power. So him being plus power is one of those things where he becomes one of the best power hitters in the system, becomes the best catching prospect. And again, 5th best player on my board. I don't view it as a reach. Some people are saying underslot. I don't know if he's underslot. I mean, everyone ends up being a little underslot, but he was top 30 on the MLB board. He's probably going to get most of that money. It is not a huge savings there. They do have another pick that is likely to be savings that we're going to talk about in a minute. on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. Oh, and then I lost the... We love our fantastic sponsors on the show, and it's a new sponsor, the good people over at Sleeper. Want the chance to win more money with less picks? Head to Sleeper, where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. Want to win 100 times your money on daily fantasy baseball? Sleeper is now offering up to 100 times payout for up to 8 pick contests. Choose as many as 8 players you like, pick more or less on your favorite baseball stats like home runs, strikeouts, and more. Get your pick right, and you could win big. Go head to Sleeper today, use the promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Remember, you're getting a $100 match, and it's a lot of our hosts talk about enjoying and using Sleeper in the past for football. They're expanding into baseball. Check it out for yourself today. And when the games are back, or if you want to listen to the All-Star game, make sure to check out SiriusXM Radio. They have all of the baseball games, including listening to, right now, Jose Ramirez will be your only Guardian in the All-Star game. So, first round, solid grade. I like Ralphy Velazquez. Like I said, if you take one of my 5 best players, last year they took my 3rd best player available when they took Chase DeLauder. But they took one of the 5 best guys I thought was still in the draft. So it's a win for me. And it was pick 23, and they took my 22nd best player. That works. So Alex Clemmey, I kind of want to do the thing where it's like, they always tell you if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So Bishop Hendrick, Rhode Island. This came up on the podcast. Arthur, who's pays attention to such things, texted Justin, who told me that this is the same high school that Thomas Pannone went to. Now, Pannone they drafted out of college, but this small school in Rhode Island. And one other final note on Velazquez is he's also young for the class. A late May birthday. He played most of his season at 17. I bring that up because guess what? It's going to be about a week before Clemmey turns 18. After saying they're kind of getting away from that age-based model, in last year's class had a lot of draft-eligible sophomores. Logan Clark they drafted, who's already 20. He was an older high school kid. Well, 2 young guys for the class back-to-back here. Clemmey is so boomer bust. I saw some sites they had him in their top 50, so I kind of went to explore and look at him. He was 50th ranked over on MLB, and he's 6'6", 205. He hits, 98, 99. And it's got huge rotations. Like, this is a potential 80 grade. He has a potential 80 grade fastball. I think, they gave it a 65. His curveball, also, tons of swing and miss. Lots of rotations. Like, he is you look at advanced metrics, he is an advanced metrics guy with those 2 pitches. So why don't I like the pick? He's young. Those 2 pitches look like he's got 2+ offerings. He had the worst command I saw in control when I was just kind of going through and watching guys. Like I put on a few videos, and it's my buddy Taylor Blake Ward calling me to tell him I'm recording and that I can't chat right now. But he had the worst command. It is, MLB gave him a 40 control. I think it's closer to like a 35. You have to completely he's a thrower. He's not a pitcher. Cleveland has not done well with that profile. They have not done well with what they do is they're awesome at taking guys and finding another gear. And they draft guys who have fantastic stuff and help them find control. It hasn't been successful. That's not what they do. This is not the type of pitcher they've been successful. And they've been terrible with prep pitchers in general. Absolutely awful. The track record on spending money on high-cost prep guys has been atrocious. And he's probably going to be over slot. And not to mention, that's just, the ultimate kiss of death. He has has, command control issues. Is the number one reason a pitcher fails. Cleveland has not corrected a player with command and control issues since Mike Clevenger. They have had horrible success rates with high school pitchers to the point where I'm like, don't draft them ever. And then the second round is their round of failure. They are just awful in the second round. It is their worst round. Most of their second rounders just bomb out. Many of them don't even get to AA. It is just really a cursed round. Clemmey's got massive. You want cathedral ceilings and basement floors? That's Clemmey. He's got some touch for a changeup, but I mean, he looks like a 2-pitch guy. You're probably betting on a reliever, which is interesting because they drafted another reliever in the draft too, who I like more than Clemmey. Again, the guy, I don't, he's a young kid. He might be a great human being. I don't know. His delivery is inconsistent. His command and control are bad. He is a thrower, not a pitcher. He was a Vandy commit. He's a guy you dream on, but I said what I loved about those other classes is recognizing what you do and leaning into it. This is taking a guy to show, hey, we can do this, even though, I know Ethan Hankins has been hurt, but that hasn't worked. Lenny Torres has been hurt. That hasn't worked. Go back to Brady Aiken, who was essentially a high school kid. Even some of those second round guys they've taken, or third round guys, like there is Tristan McKenzie as a successful high school developmental story. Who's next? Who's the other guy? I'll wait because I don't think there is one. I'm pretty sure there isn't. Like who's your next best developmental high school story in the last 20 years? There aren't any. This team cannot develop high school pitching, and they cannot develop guys with command control. So he's a 2-pitch guy, and those 2 pitches are electric. In 2 years, he could be the top prospect in this system if he proves me wrong. Or in 2 years, he'll still be an A-ball. You're probably not going to see him in affiliate ball next year. He's not pitching this year. They never have guys come out and play. But I don't know if he gets to the low A next year. Like, he is probably going to spend all of next year in Arizona. That's kind of the interesting thing. These first 2 picks, these are guys who aren't going to sniff the majors for 5 years. These are guys who are going to be deep in the system. I mean, Clemmey is not a top 20 prospect for me because, again, even though there is a lot of ceiling, the risk is high. I am not for that type of risk profile. Velazquez is with the way the system's gone this year, he'll probably slot into the top 10. But yeah, that's kind of where we're standing. We're going to take break number 2 on the show today. I'm going to come back and talk about their 3rd round pick, who's a fascinating pitcher, a very different type of guy than everyone else they have taken on today's Locked On Guardians. And our fantastic sponsor are the good people over at Bird Dogs. I love my Bird Dogs. The minute they are clean, I wear them because they're just a comfortable short. They make you look good. They've got an internal lining. This was a big debate. I didn't know about this. I asked, do I go for lining? Do I not go for lining? They let me know you go for lining. And hey, what do I got here? What was I drinking coffee in tonight to keep myself going through 6 hours now of podcasts? My Bird Dogs Yeti. This is what you get when you place an order with Bird Dogs. Every order comes with a free Yeti cooler. So get Bird Dogs. They're comfortable. I will often fall asleep wearing my Bird Dogs. I don't know if I can give a better recommendation than that. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. Enter the promo code LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or promo code LockedOn for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take off your Bird Dogs. We promise. And make sure to check out the All-Star Game and the Cleveland Guardians in the second half on Sirius XM Radio. They've got you covered when it comes to Major League Baseball. So the Guardians came back with their competitive balance pick 62, and took Andrew Walters, who, we talk about age model guys. He turns 23 this December. He's a senior. He was maybe a 6th round pick last year who didn't sign. And when he went back to Miami, I was kind of shocked that they didn't let him start. Here's this established closer, this long established closer. You move relievers in the rotation, you give them opportunities, especially as a senior. And then I realized that Andrew Walters I sat down and really studied him. He has one of the best fastballs in this class. He only has a fastball, though. His slider is not even show me level. It is a below average pitch, and he doesn't have anything else. Now, he can spot that command. His command and control on that fastball are fantastic. But he is a fastball only guy. Every pitch, you're looking fastball. And I don't know, while that's been successful in college, I don't know how that works, in Major League Baseball. It's a fantastic pitch. Some people have been really high on him due to just how good that fastball is. And like, well, you can work with him on the slider. I'm not sure you can. He is an older prospect. He's a senior sign. This should be a savings pick because I think they're going to have to roll some of that money into the Clemmey signing. Even though he was not rated, he was rated in the low 50s or 60s a lot of places. Prep arms cost more. You're signing him out of Vandy. Clemmey's going to cost money. So they came back here and did the senior sign. He's interesting. And if you want, I wrote a capsule for him over on Prospects Live. You can go read that. He's a reliever. And I wrote he would be, if you wanted to bet, he would be the guy you would bet would be the first guy to the majors from this draft class. He could help this team next year, which again is the humor because they went with two guys who were like 5 years away from being 5 years away. And then they went and took a guy who can help in a year. I don't value relievers that highly. Historically, relievers have done rather poorly when drafted because a good reliever would have been a starter if he's good enough to be a starter. In this case, he does not have the pitch mix to get it done with. So this is a savings. Maybe some of that, I'm hoping it's not all going to Clemmey. I'm hoping that they're saving some other stuff here because, he'll get some money. He's a good prospect in his own right. But I think, was it Major League Baseball had him say he would not have made my top 100 if I went that far. He wasn't in contention for, he's on my people we thought about list because I did write a capsule for him. 124. So if you think about the draft, we did what? With the competitive bounce B, the compensation round, with all of those picks, they did around 70 tonight. So they're saying that he was a 4th or 5th rounder. And he's a senior 4th or 5th rounder. So it should be significant savings. And I like him. He's my second favorite pick. I don't love him in the Comp B round. But I do understand the logic of if he is a big money saver, then you're saving that money to spread around. I'm hoping they come back big in round 3. There's part of me that really hopes, and maybe I'm wrong, that Clemmey gets full slot in round 2. The Velazquez gets near full slot in round 1. And they took Walters because he wouldn't stick around because, seniors will start going quickly and they like him and maybe they think they can work on a slider. And in round 3, they're going to come back and get one of my best available. I'll make sure to bring up who's available towards the end of the show. But the team is really good with relievers. And I know people will disagree with that. The relievers have been a little up and down at points, but it's still the second best ERA in baseball amongst relievers. It just falls apart at the worst possible times pretty consistently. But it's just so weird to me to take a reliever. I just didn't love that selection. It's fine. Didn't love it. Clemmey is a real challenge for me. Just again, because it's a profile they don't do well with. I didn't love the draft. Velazquez was a good value pick. Like I said, 22nd on my board. They got him at 23. That's good. But the next 2 picks in a very deep draft, and that's kind of my big problem. This is a deep, good college group. This is the best group of college players we've seen because the 2020 draft class was 5 rounds because of COVID. We only had a 5-round draft. More guys got to college than we have ever seen get to college because the draft was only 5 rounds. And they've taken 1 college guy, and he is a significant underslot guy. They have not leaned into the strength of the draft, and they have not leaned into the strength of their development. they've leaned into what they do poorly, which is develop catchers, pitchers with command problems, and prep pitching and power hitters. It's why it's confusing to me. The past 2 years, they leaned so into what they do well. This year, they just like leaned into what they do poorly, and I don't get it. It's not one of my favorite drafts. Let's just put it that way. Now, again, if Clemmey gets full slot in the second round, which there's a chance of that. This is my ideal scenario, okay? If he gets full slot in round 2, Velazquez is a little bit under slot in round 1. They never give anyone full slot. The highest bonus they ever gave anyone was $3.4 million to Chase DeLauder last year, and that was at in the teens. Their slot value is 3.38. I don't think he's getting all of that. I think he'll get a decent chunk. He's definitely probably going to get at least approaching $3 million, if not 3. But if you take that savings, you take Andrew Walter's slot is 1.27 million. I wouldn't be surprised if he got 270 of that, and some people might even think that's generous. So if you're talking about maybe they'd have upwards of $1.5 million if Clemmey is just full slot at his pick. And there's an outside chance he could even maybe be a little under, though I doubt it. If they then weaponize that money and come back in day 2 and pick up, okay, so I did a top 57. It's pretty picked over now. Joe Whitman going to the Giants in that compensation round, knocked off one. Jack Hurley is my number 1 guy, the outfielder from Virginia Tech, who I think most people would have thought was off the board right now because he's a plus defensive center fielder with some pop. There's some swing and miss, but man, Rock Chalosky is probably unsignable. Quarterback, shortstop, committed to UCLA. So I got those 2 guys. Then there's Travis Honeyman, who is very much a Guardians type of hitter. Health issues, which also makes him a Guardians type of hitter. The Boston College outfielder is still on the board. And after those guys, those players were in my 5th tier. So every time I felt there was a big gap in talent, I put a tier listing and broke it down. So those guys are my 5th tier. They're in the low 30s, late 20s. Now I got to scroll because you got to get down to tier 7. Tanner Witt. He's been pretty terrible in the Cape. He's probably going back to school. He's a young junior. Hasn't gone well for him, but he would be my 4th best. Jace Boheffrin out of Arkansas, I thought I'd like him more. He's up next. Jerron Watts Brown is someone I would be interested in. If they can slide him in the 3rd round, then sign me up. I think he's got a lot of good traits. Just went to a bad developmental program. Eric Batoni, another 17-year-old. Hey, they've been leaning into that model. 6'4", easy power. Big risk, like everyone else. Not their type of hitter, but hey, that's been the story of this draft. Cam Fisher, another. He's technically a junior, but he's basically a senior. Another senior sign type who put up great numbers. And then Cam Johnson, a big lefty, huge risk guy, perfect for them this year, I guess. Travis Sikora, I think he's a relief profile for me, but again, maybe that fits them. And that's my list. That's what's left. It is very picked over. There's 10 guys total from my list, and yeah, I don't know. If I look at the undrafted list, just in general, I wonder if I can do that over here on MLB. Yeah, Jack Hurley, Travis Sikora, Cam Johnson, Cole Shenwetter, Rock Chalosky. Oh, that's who I missed. Cooper Pratt he's pretty high on my list. Maui Ohana, Paul Wilson, Hunter Owens, Steven Echeverria, and Travis Honeyman are their top guys. So there's a lot of talent. So I'm hoping they'll turn around, flip some of those picks and some of that savings into some more top guys and kind of turn this around, because this is so far probably the draft I have liked the least over the last few years. Sorry for being a downer. I really like Ralphy Velazquez. There it goes. 2nd round. Walters just felt like he's a senior sign. That should be a massive money savings. We'll see. And Clemmey is it's a risk. He's a huge risk. If you wanted ceiling, this was the draft for you. I am unfortunately not that person. Who I am is Jeff Ellis. And I think many of our everydayers who joined me as I did the MLB draft show, you can find that over on Locked On Prospects. Thank you to Landon and Mike and Sean and Moving Target who came into our stream and were very generous as well. I know I'm forgetting people, but I got to bad memory. It's almost midnight, and it's been a full day of draft. I will be at least tweeting it tomorrow, so make sure you follow me. Thank you for being part of the Locked On Guardians team and crew, and go Guardians, go.